What are some weird, real-life X-Files type mysteries? Edward Leedskalnin was a 5-foot-tall dude who mined and sculpted 1 million kilograms of coral in South Florida into a home and attraction. He said he knew the secret of the Egyptians regarding moving heavy objects. That was out of control. Had a 40k-pound piece balancing on an axle as a door, that you could push open with one finger. When it needed repair they needed a crane to fix it. He installed it by himself. Never worked when he could be seen, never told the secret, and no one's figured it out. D.B. Cooper. Plane hijacker who parachuted out of the plane mid-flight and was never caught. The celestial phenomenon happening over Nuremberg in 1561. It happened randomly in Nuremberg's sky and it appeared as if it was a type of aerial battle with spheres, cylinders, and at the end of the spectacle, a black triangular object fell from the sky and a crash was heard from outside the city. This still does not have an official explanation. UFO conspiracy theorists everywhere, rejoice! The insatiable Terrare, a French man who could not stop eating. He was said to have an incredibly large mouth with stained teeth, and supposedly had a visible vapor rising off of his body. His parents kicked him out as a teenager because he was literally eating them out of house and home. He ate any and everything, including live animals, stones, silverware, anything he could get his hands on. The French military even tried employing him as a courier to smuggle documents by eating them. No doctor was able to find a cause or a cure to his appetite. He was eventually kicked out of the military hospital where they were studying him, after falling under suspicion of eating a 14-month-old child that went missing from the same hospital. A reasonable suspicion, since they caught him trying to eat dead bodies in the morgue on several occasions. The Towered Mystery. A man shows up at an airport in Tokyo and his passport says that he's from a country called Towered. When asked to point to Towered on a map, he points to Andorra but is confused because he had never heard of Andorra before. The company that he claims to work for has no idea who he is even though he had copious amounts of documentation to prove it. He was held in a hotel room guarded by 2 policemen while the police investigated the case. He disappeared from his room even though they were several stories up with no balcony. One of my favorites is the Black Triangle UFO seen over Belgium in the late 80s and early 90s. The Belgian military scrambled F-16s to intercept it but it was captured on the radar jumping from something like 10,000 feet to 25,000 feet in a single radar blip. It was seen from the ground while being captured on radar. It's a very strong case. Speculation is that it was an advanced military project, but it seems ballsy to test it in public. Ursula and Sabina Eriksson are Swedish twins who supposedly went totally batshit crazy together for roughly 72 hours. There's footage and subsequently a whole documentary of them repeatedly throwing themselves into oncoming traffic and getting hit, run over by multiple cars and even an 18-wheeler. When police arrived to sort things out, they became extremely violent like cornered animals, eventually leading them to need restraints just to administer medical attention. One was charged with assaulting a police officer when she was released from the hospital a span of a few hours, to which she responded apathetically or even cheerfully. After something like 2 days in a holding cell, she pleaded guilty and was sentenced 1 day which she already served and was released. Something like a day later, some guy found her wandering around the street looking lost, confused. He invited her in to let her use his phone and try to track down the sister who was still in the hospital, I believe, and she apparently stabbed the guy 3 to 4 times in the chest, killing him. I say apparently because all the evidence suggested that it was her, but she never actually gave her account of what happened. She answered every question with no comment from the moment of arrest throughout the trial. To top the whole thing off, doctors at the trial declared that she was insane when she committed the crime, but that she was now completely sane, and was not currently a risk to the public. The judge wanted to give her an indefinite sentence, so they would have more time to evaluate the possibility of it happening again. The law, however, required that he give her a definite sentence. Since she was declared to not currently be a risk to the public, he sentenced her to 5 years in prison. She was released in 2011 and has essentially fallen off the map since then. We know that she kept in contact with her twin through her sentence, and that they likely reunited upon release, somewhere in America. The Hoia Baciu forest in Romania. Visitors to the forest often report intense feelings of anxiety and the feeling of being constantly watched. Moreover, the local vegetation is somehow bizarre in appearance, like something out of a make-believe story with strangely shaped trees and unexplained charring on tree stumps and branches. The forest was named after a shepherd that disappeared in the area with a flock of 200 sheep. Most people who live near the forest are afraid to enter it due to the stories and legends that have been handed down. They believe that those who visit the site will never return back home. Many of the locals who have been brave enough to venture into the forest complained of physical harm, including rashes, nausea, vomiting, migraines, burns, scratches, anxiety, and other unusual sensations. I read one blog where they guessed that the presence of copper mines nearby may mean there are heavy metals down below, accounting for electromagnetic activity and other explainable causes for the weirdness. Sounds like radiation poisoning. The Hessdalen lights. Numerous sightings of the lights but no explanation yet as far I know. The death of Gloria Ramirez. Summary: a woman was brought into the ER suffering from late-stage cervical cancer. Her body had an oily sheen to it. Her breath smelled like fruity garlic. Her blood samples smelled like ammonia and had floating particles in it. Most of the people who worked on her got sick themselves. I always liked Mel's hole. A guy has a hole on his property that he claims is bottomless and has the power to restore dead animals to life. Hole is tested by some people who verify the claims. Then government gets involved to shut everything down. It is probably a hoax, but has all the elements of a good X-Files story, including government cover-up. You can listen to recordings of the original interviews from Coast to Coast AM on that page as well. That reminds me of a short story where a guy finds what he thinks might be a bottomless pit in the ground. He yells into the pit, "Hello," but he doesn't hear an echo. He then throws a pebble into the pit but he doesn't hear it hit bottom. He tells the town folks about it and they toss things into the pit to see if they can hear it hit bottom. No one does. Over time everyone starts throwing their waste and garbage into it. Then the government starts using it to get rid of the most hazardous of materials, nuclear waste, dangerous biological elements, etc. Eventually everyone in the world is shipping their waste to the hole to be disposed of. A few years later a guy is walking along a sidewalk when he hears someone say, "Hello," coming from the sky. A moment later a pebble falls into the street. Cicada 3301. Holy shit. You mean to tell me no one on the internet has ever come out and said, "Yep, here are all the answers and here's what happened after I figured it out"? The Battle of Los Angeles. Military guns and spotlights just shot up into the sky for minutes and then it was over. No one has a clue what they were shooting at. It was over LA and no one can give any reasonable account as to what happened. The military said it was a weather balloon. Most people say bullshit. Skinwalker Ranch is a ranch in northeast Utah where in the 90s the owners reported weird phenomena like giant wolf-like creatures attacking their cattle and taking multiple rifle shots without flinching, then apparently vanishing into thin air, floating orbs of light, Bigfoot-like creatures, cattle mutilations, etc. A team of scientists from the National Institute for Discovery Science including Colm Kelleher, who wrote a book about the occurrences camped out on the ranch and reportedly witnessed much of the same, including what appeared to be windows opening into other worlds and a creature climbing through, poltergeist-like, trickster activity, such as a surveillance camera being pulled down and gaffer tape being meticulously unwrapped from the cables, all while an adjacent camera picked up absolutely nothing. The ranch is on land infamous among the local native tribe as being haunted by skinwalkers, supposedly powerful shape-shifting sorcerers, and has a long history of weird happenings going back decades at least. The team of scientists, though they all experienced a lot of weird shit, were never able to gather any robust data to report back to NIDS. They got the feeling whatever they were observing knew it was being observed and did not want to be discovered. The book by Kelleher is Hunt for the Skinwalkers. Science confronts the unexplained at a remote ranch in Utah. It's a damned fascinating read. The Oakville blobs. Gelatinous blobs fell from the sky in Oakville, WA in the early 90s that made people sick and killed some animals. After testing it was shown to contain human white blood cells. A mysterious case from South Korea that had never been solved called the Frog Boys, about a group of boys 5 gone missing without their corpse remaining, nor any evidence found for about 20 years. Even soon after a massive police search in the whole area foot by foot, nothing was found. However, 20 years later, their remaining have been spotted and discovered just right near their home area, which have already been searched for thoroughly. During this period, there were multiple theories and conspiracies. One professor also personally tried playing detective and accused one of the parents for being the offender with some logical contents and accusations. Hallucinations at sea. So, this has been scientifically explained, but it's intensely creepy. Coming from a family of sailors, both my father and grandfather had similar experiences. My father described an incident where he saw floating coffins covering the entire sea. My grandfather described an incident where a swarm of crows were following the boat, and people riding on motorcycles besides the boat. The Monkey Man would have made a great episode. In May 2001, reports began to circulate in the Indian capital New Delhi of a strange monkey-like creature that was appearing at night and attacking people. Eyewitness accounts were often inconsistent, but tended to describe the creature as about 4 feet 120 centimeters tall, covered in thick black hair, with a metal helmet, metal claws, glowing red eyes and 3 buttons on its chest. Others, however, described the Monkey Man as having a more vulpine snout, and being up to 8 feet tall, and muscular. It would leap from building to building like a parkour enthusiast. Still others have described it as a bandaged figure or as a helmeted thing. Theories on the nature of the Monkey Man ranged from an avatar of the Hindu god Hanuman, to an Indian version of Bigfoot. Many people reported being scratched, and 2 by some reports. 3 people even died when they leapt from the tops of buildings or fell down stairwells in a panic caused by what they thought was the attacker. At one point, exasperated police even issued artists' impression drawings in an attempt to catch the creature. The entire incident has been described as an example of mass hysteria. Okay, the leader of the Church of Scientology is David Miscavige. He is married, but his wife hasn't been seen since August 2007. She used to be seen quite a bit by the public when her husband did things on TV. Anyway, here's the page. When I was a kid, like 2-ish, I had this dream of a man I called Big Daddy because he looked like a large version of my dad. In the dream, he lifted me up over his head, held me there for what seemed like a few seconds, and dropped me. I recall the dream vividly but not the aftermath, which my parents filled me in on. They heard a super loud thud come from my room, so they ran in and found me several feet away from my bed and both my ears were bleeding. My bed was a car bed that was only about a foot off the ground and it had walls on the side to prevent falling out of it. There was no way falling out of my bed would have made that loud of a noise, let alone the likelihood of me falling out of it to begin with. I'm pretty sure I was abducted. After that day, I had extremely vivid nightmares about Black Panthers. Not sure why that creature watching me from outside my window or in the house sometimes. They happened a few times per month and completely stopped when we moved. I remember those dreams more than any other dreams I've ever had in my life. I tell this story all the time as my campfire ghost story, but I've always been tempted to get hypnotic regression therapy to see if I could look past the disguises of whatever it was that was in my dreams to see what was really happening. Bodies in a Florida cemetery are all missing. Doesn't surprise me, it's Florida. Probably got sick of the place and moved. This account of a force field spontaneously appearing in a 3M facility, supposedly generated by static electricity from the films they were working with, but at a strength that would require insane levels of potential difference concentrated to one area for no discernible reason. I wanna see this on Mythbusters ASAP. I have some bad news. For a mystery very close to the X-Files, you'd need to look at something like the Paul Benevitz case. He lived and worked close to the Kirtland Air Force Base and intercepted what he believed to be alien communications at what he called the Dulce Base. He very well may have been the target of a government operation where he was fed false information and documents verifying his alien hypothesis by intelligence agents working for the Air Force Office of Special Investigations. He was pushed to the brink and ended up in a mental health hospital. And his story is full of X-Files-esque intrigue, like photographs of landed UFOs he took from the air. He was a private pilot being stolen from his house. There have been a few books written about it, the best being Project Beta by Greg Bishop.